Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick, and right now we got Harrison with us. How you doing, bud?
I'm good, Nick. Good to be live this week.
Hey, this is Harrison's flu game this week. So Sean
Yeah.
had his last week. Harrison's got his going this week.
It's all good.
Hopefully the flu stays away from me. You know, being immunocompromised
Yeah.
and all that. I don't need that stuff. So you guys can keep it. Sean is gonna pop in here. Like he's just coming late from an appointment, but he will be in here. But first, we want you to like, share, follow, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We've had some great interactions, so keep those coming. So thanks very much.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's a blast. I'm loving this. So it's thanks to you guys. So also during the week, I'm going to be throwing out random trivia questions and random facts and stuff, so you guys can interact with that. Just picked up my daily calendar. It's pretty sweet. Got it for $4. So there's some random facts and trivia questions that we'll throw out during the week, along with our question of the week. All right. So leading off, we are going to touch base on the lockout. They had a meeting on Thursday. It didn't go very well. In fact, the MLB brought forth, what they wanted to change, what they wanted to bring to the table, and the Players Association simply just went, no. And they're like, okay, like, what do you want? And the Players Association was like, we got nothing. They had no counter argument for what the MLB wanted, and I just don't understand. Like, you got to at least tell the MLB, like, what you want. Like, they're just taking a shot in the dark. I mean, I'm sure they have some idea of what the players want, but it's like I don't get it. But
yeah, either the Players Association is playing a dangerous game of chicken, thinking they hold all the power, and MLB will fold as they get closer to, backing up spring training and potentially losing regular season games, or the MLBPA under Mr. Clark is really just that disorganized. They haven't actually put all their thoughts together collectively, and they don't actually have a counter proposal. But right now, every time they get together, it's Major League Baseball saying, here's what we think we can do. The players go, no, and they go, okay, well, we'll see you next time. There's really not any conversation. There's really no dialogue going on. There's just a couple of proposals that have been tossed out there, shot down, and really to this point, as a baseball fan, it's disheartening to see the fact they've made literally no progress in the last 2 months.
I mean, pitchers and catchers report in a month. They're 4 weeks away. Like, this needs to get done quickly. And I think the next couple of weeks, they're going to really feel the heat. I mean, who's going to cave first? Is the league going to cave first or the players? I mean, I think that's the question. You're right. It's that dangerous game of chicken. Like, who's going to fold?
Yeah, and you'd think when both sides got pretty significantly impacted in 2020 with COVID, when the season was shortened and payrolls were cut to be kind of commensurate with the length of the season, and there were no ticket sales, you think both sides would be like, okay, let's get a deal done and get some momentum going again. But these two are just staring at each other like everything's fine, and I don't care if we never play baseball again. We'll get to this when we get to it. And I just don't see how they're gonna move forward if to this point they can't even have a conversation.
Yeah, the MLB had offered a higher minimum salary for players. Mm-hmm. So I think they upped it to, it was like $680 something from like $575. The numbers are somewhere around there. And the players union just was like, yeah, that's disappointing. Like, that they were quoted in saying that was a disappointing offer. Like, I mean, God, I'd take minimum salary in a heartbeat, dude. Like, give me that $678,000. Like,
right.
Goodness gracious. And then also the players really, really want that 5-year free agency. So right now you have to accrue 6 years of MLB service time in order to become a free agent, where you can sign for mega millions to a team that wants you. But the players want that down to 5. And like we have said previously on a podcast, I think you said it, Harrison, like, if they cave and give them the 5 now, the next negotiating period, they're going to want 4. Then they're going to want 3. And then we're going to look like the NBA, where everybody is, oh, I want to play with Tatis and Guerrero, who's all of a sudden now on the Kansas City Royals, because that's where everyone's going. And I feel like that's what the NBA's gotten wrong. And that's what the MLB, the owners are like, we don't want that. We don't want those super teams. We want the parity in our league.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what that's if anybody's learned anything in sports, it's should be from the NFL. Does anybody love the salary cap? Not really. It's complicated. It's convoluted. There's a lot of things to it, and there's not a lot of wiggle room there. It's a hard cap. You're either under it or you're not. But what has it done? I mean, look at the playoffs this year. Look at the teams in the playoffs. I mean, some of these teams. I mean, the Steelers. This was a team that was written off for dead early in the season, made the playoffs. But you literally in the last weekend of the season, you had like 22 teams vying for the final playoff spots out of a 30-team league.
Yeah.
Into the final weekend of the season. I mean, everybody should want that level of parity where the fans are engaged all the way to the end versus MLB where half the fans are checked out by like July because their team's 30 games out of first place and nobody cares.
Right. And even in the NFL, even if your team didn't make the playoffs, you're a Jets fan and you're like, God, man, I want to see the Patriots lose. I just got to see the Patriots lose. Like, they're still engaged in the season. Like, they still watch. But the Patriots lost Saturday night. They're my team. What did I do all day Sunday? I watched football. Football is a completely different animal. I get it. I totally get it. They play once a week. Baseball for 4 hours. Baseball is 4 hours every day. I get the difference. I really do. But yeah.
But the popularity of the NFL really exploded when they figured out the salary cap and got some parity, and more teams were competitive, and more fans were engaged, and fans stuck around longer and watched more games and bought more stuff. And to your point, can you really draw a parallel between football and baseball? No, 162 games versus 17 is way different. But in terms of keeping the product on the field worth watching, you can't have teams win 108 games while a bunch of others win 62. Like, you can't have that massive spread constantly. Can you have a couple of them? Sure. Just like, the Jets and the Jaguars, like, you got rebuilding teams. But like, if you watch this league, there's a cycle of teams that are on the way up and on the way down, on the way up and on the way down, and they're constantly retooling their rosters. You don't have these teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers that are there necessarily every single year with different faces. It's just too hard to build a team through free agency in the NFL where you've got a cap.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that kind of goes to the whole revenue sharing piece too, the Pirates only spending $27 million a year, or the Dodgers have a $280 million payroll, that's a big difference too. I think that's another argument that they're also bringing to the table as well, that whole revenue sharing piece. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is if you look across Major League Baseball, the average team is spending, between 45 and 50% of their operating revenue on payroll, which is pretty consistent with the NFL. I think the NFL's salary cap is set to be in that 50 to 55% range. So you've got a lot of teams that are in it. That also includes teams like the Rays, Pirates, and Men Athletics that spend nothing.
Yeah.
But on average, I mean, when you look at the percentage of money spent versus what they bring in, it's actually pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of comments by here. We got Nick from the M&M SOS podcast. I'm going to be honest, they are starting to get better with that. It wasn't like in the 90s if someone hit a bomb and showed them up, you got drilled in the head and next at that,
Right.
It is getting better, but you're right. We've talked about this. The MLB does not market their players and does not market their personalities at all. And that is why the younger kids don't, they don't go or gravitate to those stars. Like we've said before, Mike Trout should be marketed all over this country. Does he necessarily want it? Probably not. But there's tons of guys in the league that would totally do that. Tatis would be a perfect cover boy. Guerrero would do it. There's these young kids coming up would totally love to be the face of baseball.
Well, you look at what the NFL has done with players like Mahomes and Dak Prescott, and these guys are selling yogurt and boots and watches and cars and you name it, they're selling it. MLB, look around the landscape of advertising. You don't see a single MLB player out there anymore. Not
No,
one.
no, it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, and Scott's like this is. I mean,
This is so true.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about it. Like, you know, we got to have that. What is it? The 100 million we said was the salary floor that we would like them to spend. Then it forces the teams, instead of being here, they're here. You know, like there's still a gap, but it's not nearly as bad, and it's going to be more competitive. But
right, for sure.
Nick,
and then one last one here, yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
This is incredible. I mean, it's so true. You've got you got Trout and Ohtani on the same team in Anaheim, and the team's terrible. You know, how is it possible you can have two of your potentially biggest stars, and Ohtani arguably became the face of baseball this year. Another guy you don't find an advertisement anywhere, but he's kind of he's been kind of given the role as the face of baseball.
I love that.
But
I don't know if
most
you
people don't know him.
Oh yeah, have you seen that meme going around about everybody pressuring him to learn English?
No.
So like there was a quote saying like, Ohtani, are you gonna learn English? He's like, I just play baseball. Like baseball is my language. I just come over here and play. It's like I don't need to speak English to, you know, to show you guys what I got. And it shouldn't be like, oh, he has to speak English to be the cover boy. Like, no. That's the silliest argument ever.
No, and here's a great point from Scott. This is what the NFL does so well. Baker Mayfield is an average quarterback on his absolute best day, and yet that guy's in ads everywhere. You know, baseball used to have the guys like Ken Griffey Jr. and Torrey Hunter, who were big personalities and larger than life and got butts in seats.
Yeah.
And they marketed him well. I mean, Griffey was on video games, and he had his own line of shoes and cleats with Nike and performance gear and sunglasses, and he had everything. Who's the last MLB player that had that kind of marketing push behind them? I couldn't tell you.
I don't know. I mean, the only other commercial that I can even think of was Chicks Dig the Long Ball with Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux. That's
the only commercial you ever talk about.
Right, but that's it, right?
That's the problem.
Is there another baseball commercial?
No.
I mean,
no, it was Griffey. It was Griffey and those guys. I mean, hell, even back in the day, you had Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who weren't necessarily. I mean, Larry Bird was terrible with the media, but they were doing the McDonald's commercials, banking shots all over the arena.
Right.
I mean, even the NBA put Larry Bird, who was terrible with the media, out in front of the media.
Dude, the NBA put George Murison in a Snickers commercial.
I remember that.
This one's for the kids. He's like knocking out the chefs and stuff in the back, dude. Like, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, Jeter had All-Star baseball.
That's right.
So
he did. And then they moved. They moved all the baseball stuff into that whole under that MLB The Show platform, and baseball decided to brand the whole thing under MLB's name. Oh yeah, Scott Sullivan Tire with Pedroia.
See, I was gonna say, I was gonna actually bring that up because it's true, but Sullivan Tire is a local station, right? So Pedroia is not even nationally on advertising. Like, so everybody in New England already knows who Dustin Pedroia is. Like, cool, he's on a Sullivan Tire commercial. Everybody already knows who he is, but somebody in San Diego is not going to know who Dustin Pedroia is.
No, and how do you you're not going to draw kids into baseball by having Dustin Pedroia sling tires. Like, you know, you need these guys selling Gatorade and energy bars and Monster and Red Bull and all the crap kids want, you know, smartphones. Like, these guys should be selling stuff kids are after to get them into the game and create that awareness with kids. Because that's who you're losing. Like, the kids are seeing all the stuff that, you know, Dak Prescott and Mahomes and Brady, and these guys are all over everything. You know, everything these kids buy has an NFL player tied to it.
I mean, and think about what Nickelodeon just did with the wild card games.
That was cool.
That's, you know what I mean? Like, something simple as that. Like, you know how many kids that reached this weekend? A ton. Yep. Does the MLB do anything like that? No. Do they do a punt, pass, and kick? Like, sort of, but do they advertise for it? No. It's terrible. But
this is a good one by Morgan. I do agree. I think in many cases, with free agency and guys move around so much, I don't necessarily think they have any ties to the communities they're in. Some do, but I think on average, it's about the name on the back. It's not about the name on the front. But I would say that's also true in the NFL. I feel like those guys are very much thinking about their personal brands and what it means to them and what their future looks like. I think the difference is the NFL promotes them even in spite of that, where MLB just kind of goes, well, you guys are on your own. You find your own endorsements. But that's if these MLB players had all these massive endorsements coming at them that MLB was helping to solicit, are they worried about the minimum salary and the Super 2 and the 5 or 6 year exemptions? No, because they'll all be making so damn much money they won't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
But because they don't have these other things behind them, the players only have one source of income. It's the salary. So that's what they're after. LeBron took less money to go to Los Angeles, knowing he'd get more endorsements because of who he was.
Right.
Arguably Brady always played under market because he wanted to build winners because he made all his money elsewhere.
Right.
Football was actually not even always his primary source of income. So,
Yeah, his wife was.
Well, his wife was, but also the fact that there were a number of years where he would make as much money off the field
Oh yeah,
as he did on it
100%.
through all of his endorsement deals and the whole TB12 craziness and all that stuff. But these MLB guys don't have those additional options because MLB has done a terrible job promoting the game and getting these
Yeah,
guys those at bats.
and I think it goes back to what Nick Fanning said was, letting these players' personalities shine through. The league doesn't care. The league doesn't really want it. They got to keep baseball pristine, and it can't be.
Right.
I don't know. It's a mess. All of it's a mess. I'm hoping that they get it ironed out here.
Yeah, MLB is going dangerously close to the direction the NHL did, which was turning it into more of like a pretentious country club environment. Like the NHL, hockey has become so exclusive, and those guys also don't get marketed anywhere either because most people don't know them because hockey is still probably the third or fourth most popular sport in the country. But the NHL, between the cost of getting into hockey, the availability of ice, the limited youth programs, like the NHL doesn't care that they don't recruit kids. They just don't care because most of the players are from overseas anyways.
Right.
But they've made it like such a country club exclusive group that you can't even get into it. MLB is dangerously close to going the same route where the NFL and NBA have opened it wide open, and these guys are household names.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Nicholas, it's a good point. The league has done everything under its own banner, and they don't like to do it under a player's name, and they've been consistent with that. They stopped naming the games after players. What has the NFL done with their video games? Put under the Madden name.
Right.
Nobody cares about playing NFL 2021. They want Madden 21. Like that's the big deal.
Yeah. I mean, just think about what Babe. I mean, obviously, none of us were alive in the 1930s, obviously, but what Babe Ruth brought to baseball. He put baseball on the map. Was it around for 50, 60 years before that? Of course. But he was such a polarizing figure that he kept baseball going. For the league not to want that again when baseball is struggling, I will never understand that. I don't get it. And you have the players out there that can do it. I don't get it.
No, it's not the same, and MLB needs to take a nice hard look in the mirror at what they've done for the game. I mean, this whole negotiation is they're going to end up haggling over how much how many pennies they allocate one way or the other, and in the end, the fan doesn't care. And really, in the end, it isn't going to get the players what they want. What the players want is more opportunity. They want more chances to make money. They want a better quality game. The fans want a game worth watching. If MLB doesn't actually address the core problems it has, which is making baseball cool again, maybe we should get red hats printed out and say "Make baseball cool again." If they don't do that, none of this matters. They're just going to keep having this fight every few years while the attendance, continues to bounce around where it is and the game stays right where it is.
Right. And if people don't come to the ballpark, the league's going to be like, listen, we don't have the money to pay you. We just don't.
Right.
You don't bring fans to put butts in seats. No one's getting a paycheck. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just how it is.
It's got to be all about promotion and, reach of the game. These haggling over 5-year versus 6-year free agencies and Super 2 status and percentage of revenue, nobody cares. And it won't matter in 10 years and nobody's watching the game anymore. They need to actually address the game. And they need to make it an event. An NFL football game, granted it's once a week, is an event. The big hits, the celebrations, the touchdown dances, like all that crazy stuff.
Right.
I mean, granted, baseball is always, you hit a home run, you run, put your head down and run. You don't, I'll hit you in the ear flap. maybe baseball needs to get away from some of that, and the traditionalists like me need to let go of the way the game's supposed to be played and make it entertaining again.
Yeah. Nick also brings up another great
Yeah,
point. Like,
this is going to piss fans off.
I can't express how upsetting it is to get baseball back after COVID and then shut down the year after a lockout. I mean, I 100% agree. And
Yep.
we had talked about this too. You know, it's like, you know, people were so excited for this season and the free agent class that they had this year. Like,
I know.
This was the best free agents class they have had in quite some time, and they saw this coming. Like, free agency just doesn't sneak up on you, and the people that are on the list just don't sneak up on you. They knew these free agents were coming, and they just completely blew it up, like destroyed it. It's terrible.
It goes back to what we've been talking about all along. This is just MLB and the Players Association being completely tone deaf with the world.
Yeah.
They live in a bubble. They don't necessarily understand public perception or how they're viewed. They just live in a bubble. And to them, they're going to haggle over revenue splits and free agent statuses and all this nonsense that the fans don't care about, that in the end don't really dramatically change anything for them. And you're gonna make a game that's not as marketable as it used to be, even less so. And it's just the league is the league. Again, I go back to if I'm in the league office, I'm taking a look in the mirror and just saying, am I doing what's necessary to help the game? And the answer is no. I'm not. I'm not even close.
No. Yeah, they're only looking out for number one, both sides right now. They're not thinking whole picture. You know,
no, the problem is
they need to think out.
Yeah, and the problem is when you're too busy looking out for number one, you end up stepping in number two, and that's where they're at right now. You know, they look like idiots. And honestly, to Nicholas's point, the public doesn't care. They just don't care. Either play or don't. But if you don't play this year, don't ever play again, because I'm not so sure fans will ever care that you came back.
No,
shut up, get on the field and earn your money.
Yeah, and I mean they're grossly overpaid as it is, and for them to be arguing over, I mean at this scale, 10 cents, you know, like it's silly. I don't understand it.
Right, you can make 20 million or 20 and a half. You can make 580 or 675. It doesn't change your life. No. But making zero next year, that changes your life.
Absolutely.
But until they're presented that as a real opportunity and a reality, nobody's going to react. We'll be lucky if the games start in July, because they'll drag this out until everybody starts feeling some pain. Yeah. And until you get hit in the wallet, nobody cares.
No, agree. All right, well, that's enough depression for tonight. Let's move on to a fifth inning showdown here, where we're going to talk about which Red Sox World Series roster do we think had the best team? The team in 2004, the team in 2007, or the team in 2013? So, Harrison, who do you think had the best squad out of out of those three? We all know 2018 was probably the team that was nasty.
Yeah, the 2018 team was by far and away the best World Series winning roster they've had. Yeah. And so I looked at this, and out of the three teams, I think 2013 is by far the weakest roster. I'm not, honestly, when you look at that roster, you know, you had just a hodgepodge of players on that team. They should not have won with that roster.
They got Buckholz, they just shouldn't have. Brian Dempster, Jon Lester.
Oh,
I mean, Yui Hara was nasty. He was good.
Yeah.
But David Ross, Saltalamacchia, Mike Karp, Stephen Drew.
Right. I mean, Johnny Gomes was a big player for you. Like
Gomes, Mike Napoli, Daniel Nava. Like, I mean,
it's just not an impressive roster. So I immediately threw 13 out. I said no way.
But that was the marathon year, and you can't play that. That was a huge. Hello, sir.
What's up, boys?
Loving the jersey. Like it.
Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah.
No worries. We're just starting the Red Sox team debate. So
I was reflects on your time card.
Yeah. There'll be a little extra nothing in your paycheck this week.
Yeah. So we were just going over the 2013 Red Sox roster and how it was just a modge podge of nothing.
It was guys that came through when they needed to come through, and it was an exciting team to watch. Like, I remember, you know, the first one to win the World Series at home since 1901 or whatever the hell that was.
And they're the last ones to do it since.
I know that, which
No
is
one
crazy,
has won at home since. That's
No,
insane.
which
never.
is nuts.
Yeah.
But I mean, they just came through where they had to. And I'll tell you, to me, when I think about the 13 team, it's the back end of the bullpen. It was Sewazara, or however you pronounce it, and then Koji in the ninth, Yui, whatever. Those guys, man, they were lights out. They were absolute guaranteed 1, 2, 3 in the eighth, 1, 2, 3 in the ninth. Thanks for coming. Like it was a guarantee.
Daniel Bard before he fell off the train there.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
But Shane Victorino was on that team. He had that huge grand slam in the CS, I think it was. Like massive.
Johnny Gomes.
Dude. Johnny Gomes, yeah.
Johnny Gomes had some big hits. I mean, Will Middlebrooks had a pretty good year for himself in 2013. In a pretty good postseason.
On and off the field.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was the postseason where Ortiz was on base at like an 85% clip.
Yeah.
In that World Series.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Middlebrooks was hurt. He had a good season and then missed a huge chunk of it. But you had Napoli ripping bombs, and it was just a weird roster. Like you look at that roster and go, that's a wild card team maybe. But they just, to your point, Sean, you nailed it. It was a team that it was one guy always came up with the big hit, the big play. The bullpen was good. Like they were one of those teams that was just consistently good enough that they won series.
Like Nick said, and it wasn't always the same guy. Like it would be Victorino's turn, and then it would be Napoli's turn, and then it was Johnny Gomes's turn, and it was just, and then it was David Ortiz's turn, and then I mean, people kind of forget, like it wasn't a great year, but like Saltalamacchia had a decent second half of the year to give you offense from behind the plate. Like it was just a weird roster. It was just weird roster.
Another underrated arm in that bullpen, a lefty, Craig Breslow.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Craig Breslow. Yes. You're right.
Yeah, he was very underrated. So I thought this was pretty interesting. Listen to these records, these season records. 04, 98 and 64. 07, 96 and 66. 13, split the difference, 97 and 65. They were all within 2 games of each other, all 3 games, all 3 years.
And then you had the 2018 team that won like 1 billion games. That team wasn't even close.
That team was so far and away better.
That's why we didn't put it in this one. But
right, no, I know that wouldn't have. That's not even. You can't even make an argument for anyone over the 18.
So we're not going with 13, but this is what the American League ranks for the 13 team. They were first in runs, first in doubles, first in OBP, first in slugging, and first in total bases. Second in hits, second in walks, second in batting average. And then top 5 in everything else. Pitching, they were first in wins, and after that, nothing. They were like 6th through 10th. Like they were not. No, they just slugged their way. But yeah. 07. I think I'll have to go with 07. But
I think so too. Go ahead.
I got stuck on this one. So I look at it as I think 07 probably had the best roster. I think when you look at pure talent and lineup, I think 07 had the best roster. I feel like 04 was the best team though.
I think so too.
But and I think about it not in terms of like stats and all that, but I think when you look at how they're the makeup of the team, the personality of the team, the attitude of the team, there's no way if you put that 07 or that 13 team in the same position as the 04 team coming off that 03 collapse and all that stuff, that team had to literally go from that massive 03, the whole Grady Little disaster, and break it and getting your heart broken like that, to come back in 04, you trade Nomar, you blow the roster up a little bit, you bring in these kind of nobodies in Mankiewicz and Cabrera and, guys that you didn't really know much about. You retool the team midseason, they take off. They go down 3-0 to the Yankees. Everybody in the world thinks they're dead except for them. They rally all the way back, go into the World Series and absolutely smoke the Cardinals. Like, wasn't even a contest. I don't think 07 or 13 teams had the balls or the intestinal fortitude to go down the path the 04 team did and blaze that trail. And so I look at if I had to go into the playoffs with 04 or 07, I would take the 04 team because I think the 07 team could get beaten. I don't think anybody was beating the 04 team, and I don't think they cared who you were. Just like we talked about the Braves this year, I picked the Braves because they had that same attitude of the don't let us win because we'll never give it back to you. That was the 04 Red Sox. It was don't let us back into the series because we'll never let up.
Yeah, I mean, and that
Yeah.
team had some great. I mean, all of them had a role and they all played it really well. All of them, but
I mean, they thoroughly dominated that World Series. But you go down that roster, you had Damon in his prime. You had Orlando Cabrera, who was only there for part of the year. Mark Bellhorn. People forget Mark Bellhorn had a big home run in that series for them.
he was
But
a
during the
walk,
regular
strikeout, or
season,
home run.
yeah, but during the regular season, the guy hit 17 bombs and drove in 80 runs. A guy that
Yeah.
nobody really knew who he was. You had Millar, you had Billy Miller with huge hits. Ortiz and Ramirez. Ortiz hit 41 home runs. Manny hit 43. You had Veritek really in his prime. You had Poggy Reese, we all forget about, kind of a defensive whiz. And then you had, Pedro, Schilling, Lowe, Folk closing it out. I mean, the 04 team wasn't
Kim.
Yeah, BK Kim.
Yeah.
But the 04 team was not like lacking talent. They didn't have like big star talent. The 07 team had more, I would say, bigger names to it. But
Yeah.
that 04 team was just so balanced and played so well off each other, and just it had that next man up mentality. If somebody didn't get a big hit, somebody else would.
Yeah, I will definitely give you that. I certainly could not make a case. Like the 04 team was way more likable. They definitely had that kind of chemistry. Like you look at the 07 roster, and I agree. I think the 07 roster just probably had better names on it with, Youkilis at first base, Pedroia at second base, Mike Lowell at third base. You had Josh Beckett on the mound, Daisuke, Kurt Schilling. Like there was bigger names, but definitely not as likable of a baseball team. That's a fact, I would say. Right? I mean, like Mike Lowell. Josh Beckett would rub you the wrong way. Like there was just something about the guy. Like he was a great pitcher and he put his nuts out there when he had to, but then the whole chicken and beer thing, like it just wasn't as likable of a team.
JD Drew, like get out of here with JD Drew.
But I will.
He's the Red Sox player I most dislike in like all of history. I just can't stand him.
I guess I will have to be the solo JD Drew truest on this podcast. JD Drew was exactly who JD Drew was. JD Drew, his time with the Red Sox was exactly like his time in Atlanta, was exactly like his time everywhere else that he went. The fact that the Red Sox paid him $1 bajillion is not JD Drew's fault. Yeah. And like he gets like shit on it. It's like, oh my God, like JD Drew, they paid, $175 million. It's like, yeah, but he was exactly what he was. He was a very good right fielder, and that is not an easy right field to play. And he made everything look like a routine fly ball at Fenway. And that is not an easy right field.
Huge hits.
I'm just talking like, but people talk about his attitude. Well, he just seems so lazy. It's like, no, he was just an even-keeled guy. Like he wasn't going to throw the bat in the dugout. He wasn't going to slam and the bullpen phone like we've seen Ortiz do. Like he was just an easygoing guy.
Beat up the Gatorade cooler with a bat.
Nick, to your point, that grand slam he hit against Cleveland in the playoffs,
biggest for sure.
I think to this day, like up until 32-year-old Sean, like that might be a moment that like I remember where I was, what I was doing. Like that was a moment for me.
Yeah,
like absolutely. Him taking that pitch to dead center was a moment for me.
Yeah.
So I will always look at JD Drew and say, I just think he was unfairly like punished by Red Sox fans.
Well, as somebody who utterly despises the man, I'm a Florida State Seminole for the record, so I was always a big JD Drew fan because of his background, but I can't stand the guy because he was so frustrating to watch. He was so frustrating to watch because, to your point, he had zero emotion. The guy was a robot. He would get injured with the weirdest, most bizarre stuff when it happened. He would stand there and you could pipe 2 fastballs down the middle, the first 2 pitches. He wasn't swinging at him. Never. He was horrendous with runners in scoring position because he was not aggressive. Like he wouldn't try to hit. He would try to walk. And he drove me insane. He was the most maddening, frustrating player to watch with zero personality, zero likability. And you're right. When you look at his stats, he's exactly what they got.
That's what he was.
He was an 18 to 20 home run a year guy, 65 to 85 RBIs. he was a better than average right fielder.
No,
But he wasn't.
I would say he was better than average. But
all right,
we could do
all right.
that
So
time, I guess.
yeah,
But
so
he was better than average.
Yeah.
JD Drew,
He was good.
for
He was
my
good
money,
right fielder.
for my money, JD Drew was just a step below a Gold Glove right fielder.
Well, fair
I
enough.
wouldn't
All right.
put him up there. I don't think he was a Gold Glove. I think he had Gold Glove moments, but I don't think he'll give you Gold Glove plays year in and year out. But he was, for what the Red Sox needed for him in that right field at Fenway, he was more than serviceable. I mean, this guy made everything look like a routine fly ball. And we've seen right fielders out there struggle because that's not an easy right field.
No, I'll give you that. Defensively, he was a solid right fielder. But like the overall package, I think he was
right. I'll give you that.
He was an upper third right fielder in the total package.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
And yeah, you're right. Red Sox fans punished him because he came with a big contract and a lot of hype. That wasn't his fault. But he was maddening to watch as a Red Sox fan because we like the guys that are like all out, max effort, like love the game, love to win. And to him, it was, I come into the ballpark, I do these things, I go home. I don't care the outcome. You guys pay me to play, not to care.
Yep.
And he just, the fan base never latched on to him, myself included.
Yeah.
I just found him maddening to watch.
I have a big conspiracy theory with JD Drew. And because JD Drew had the same agent as Daisuke. And the year we brought JD Drew in is the same year that we paid all that money for Daisuke to come to Boston. And I have a theory that, was it Boris, that went to the Red Sox and they said, listen, JD Drew wants X amount of years for Y amount of dollars. If you give JD Drew this contract, I guarantee Daisuke will be in Boston. And that's why I think they signed. JD Drew was the first signing of the offseason. I remember that's such a weird first guy to go after.
It was bizarre.
That was a weird first guy. And that's what I think. I think that Scott Boras said, you give JD Drew what he wants, Daisuke will be in Boston. Otherwise, he's going to Texas or wherever the hell else he was going to go.
As you're saying that, it makes me think of, you know why JD Drew was so not likable? Because he followed Trot Nixon. That's why.
Yeah, well, if
he didn't follow a guy like Trot Nixon, I think it would have been okay. Because if you look at like Hunter Renfroe, I thought Renfroe was great. He was the same thing as JD Drew with slightly better numbers.
Well, a little bit more emotion though. Like Renfroe,
a little bit more.
A little bit. But I'm with you.
I think following Trot Nixon is probably, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I feel like following Trot was probably the biggest injustice to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was also part of that back-to-back.
Yeah.
Squad. 4 home runs in a row.
That was cool.
The same Yankee pitcher is cool, but
wait,
a couple other names on. Oh, sorry.
He's been part of it twice.
Yeah, you're right. LA, right?
LA, and he's the only player to have been part of something like that twice.
That's wild.
Okay,
and
I'm convinced.
He was the third one in each instance too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh God.
A couple other names on that 07 team: Brandon Moss, Willie Mo Pena, Alex Cora. Do we know him? Do we know Alex Cora?
Willie Mo Pena.
Kevin Cash.
Oh my God.
Eric Hinsky. Manny Del Carmen.
Manny, he was good. He was solid for a while.
And he was a Boston guy. He came right from Boston High School.
That's right.
Willie Mo Pena.
And Bobby Kielty.
Oh, yeah.
The redhead?
Bobby Kielty.
Yep.
He was a redhead, wasn't he?
No,
yeah.
Well, I think, or was Moss the redhead?
No, Kielty was. Kilty's an Irish boy.
Right?
Yeah, Kilty's an Irish boy.
So,
Willie Mo Pena was like the Yasiel Puig before Puig. Like he was just that weirdo that could mash sometimes. That was like, I mean, granted Puig was better, but he was like the first iteration of that like Latin player that nobody could quite figure out to like walk to his own the beat of his own drum.
His whole career, he's never seen a curveball. His whole career, everything's a fastball. everything's just a fastball. He's never seen a curveball his whole career.
No.
Yeah, just ask him.
Yeah.
I
mean,
never seen a curveball.
I mean, we all are in agreement. 07's probably the best team, right?
Yeah,
out of the three.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, purely based on talent, I think 07 is the team.
Yeah, but I'm with Harrison. I think 04 is the team you would take day in and day out. Those guys are going to fight every inch, every second. Yeah. But 07 talent-wise, I think the best of the three for sure. Yep. All right, we're going to move on to seventh inning stretch where we are in the NL East Mount Rushmore. Harrison has the National and the Braves. Sean has the Mets and the Marlins. And I got the Fightin' Phils. Well, not the Fightin' Phils because they're a minor league team, but I just got the Phillies. So Who wants to take the first one?
I'll go. I'll take the Nats first. This section was actually a little bit tricky for me. All right, so the Nats. So when you so of course with the Nationals you have to go back into the history of Expos, and then even further back into the days of it was the Senators, right, when they moved.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 2 Expos and I've got 2 Nationals. Now, maybe not necessarily the top 4 players statistically, history-wise, but these are the players that I think of I think that are most associated with these teams. So when I look back into the history and go to the Expos, the 2 guys that were there the longest, had the greatest impact, are in most cases best known with the Expos. And believe it or not, I didn't pick Vlad Guerrero, which would have been an easy one.
Interesting.
I took Gary Carter,
Mm.
who was there for 10 seasons, and for a while there held a lot of the records for the team. And then Tim Raines, who was there for 12
Raines.
seasons. I honestly didn't realize Tim Raines had been there so long. But he was actually did 2 stints there. He was there from 79 to 90, and then he came back in 2001 to end his career, just to kind of cap it off. Yeah. Gary Carter was there from 74 to 84. Honestly, was probably the most recognizable Expo for most of their existence. And then the third guy that could have been picked that was there at the same time was Andre Dawson, another guy who was there for 10 years. The Expos had some really talented guys in that 70s, 80s window.
Dennis Martinez.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can keep going down the list. You got Dennis Martinez was in that group. You also had Vlad, but he was later.
Henry Rodriguez.
You had Steve Rogers, who won 158 games for them.
Captain America.
I mean, yeah, right. You had all kinds of talent in the 70s and 80s that came through Montreal. So I took Gary Carter and Tim Raines. They were really the ambassadors of the Expos.
Yeah, for sure.
And then when I come to the Nationals, the 2 players, and like I said, maybe not even the most statistically significant to them, but the people that I think everybody associates the Nationals with, one was Steven Strasburg, who was really their first big splash.
Yeah.
And has, obviously World Series win and is on pace to set a lot of the records there. But second for me is Ryan Zimmerman. Like, he is the player I think of when I think of the Nationals. I think Juan Soto's the guy that'll kind of carry that mantle forward. But Zimmerman was there forever. He was the face of that franchise. He arguably still is, and he's retired.
Yeah.
He played
that's
1,000
who I
different
think about
positions for them too.
Oh, he did.
That guy would play every position in the field that they needed him to play.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
They called him Mr. National. I mean, you can't.
Like I think of Michael Young with the Rangers, who I also picked because of how much of what he did for the organization. Although they stunk when he was there, he was there for a long time, played 4 different positions, won a Gold Glove at one of them. Zimmerman was the same thing for the Nationals. They're getting off the ground. They had just come to Washington. He was really the first kind of name in there. But he really, he was Mr. National, as they call him. And even when the team was awful and when they'd sign new players, he'd move positions to try to accommodate. And there isn't a player, I think, that's more rooted in the existence of a team than a guy like Ryan Zimmerman.
No, I agree. It's a great list. I don't disagree at all. And you're right. I just don't think so. I mean, Soto's gonna be there.
Right.
Just not yet. I mean, the kid's 20. I mean, he can't even buy beer yet. I mean,
no, and Max Scherzer had a really good 5 years there, but it was only 5 years. And a lot of Nationals fans, still think of Strasburg and Zimmerman ahead of him. Vlad Guerrero was really good in Montreal. He was only there for 7 years. Most people remember him as an Angel.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
It's hard. And Bryce Harper, I just kind of 6 years, and he was all personality. But again, even in the time Bryce Harper was there, everybody still looked to Ryan Zimmerman as the face of that franchise. Bryce Harper was never the face of that franchise for all the hype.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sean, on
for
you.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do the Mets first. We got to go Mets always first.
Oh yeah.
The Mets is an interesting one too, because it's like, as you guys know, the history that the franchise has. You could probably do like 3 different sections of like Mets, like 70s, early 80s Mount Rushmore, right? And like you could kind of go through. So to kind of pick 4 was, it was fun, but it was tough to narrow it down. First one, Tom Seaver. I mean, how do you not pick terrific Tom Seaver? Guy was unreal. 3,640 strikeouts as a Met. To me, there's all these Tom Seaver stats that are just ridiculous. But I think his career whip as a Met is 1.1. Career 1.1. Like, that is insane. I mean, you just didn't get on base. The guy would give you one runner an inning. That's it. That's all you get. You get one runner, and you better do something with it. You're probably not. And that was him. 2, another pitcher, Dwight Gooden. Dwight Gooden, I know we were texting like during the week. This guy is a definite Hall of Famer if he can stay off the drugs and have more than just a good first 2 or 3 years of his career. This guy was absolute, like, and I think I knew it. He was obviously before my time, like when he was pitching live. Like, I think I knew how good he was. You see like the highlights, but then like you start like digging further into it. And, like, this guy had stretches of just pure dominance, like 99 Pedro dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was 19 years old when he made his major league debut. 19 years old. His 19-year-old season, he had over like 175, 185 strikeouts. At 19 years old.
Yeah,
like
freak.
It was freak. It was, but he couldn't, and he was very open. I don't know. I'm sure you guys watched the it was like a 3 or 4 part documentary thing on ESPN, the 30 for 30 or whatever. And he was very open about how he's like, I was 20, 21, living it up in New York. Like, I got hooked on the drugs, and he's like, and it derailed his entire life, not just his career. But like, it was kind of sad. But I still think I had to put him on there. I know it was only for a couple of years, 1985. Where are we looking at here? Oh, where did it go? Oh, shit. Let me find it real quick. I had the number, and I just X'd out of it.
But, I mean, if you think of the Mets, like, Doc Gooden always pops into my head. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, he's always there. Like, he was just consistent.
I always think of Bobby Bonilla because he's still on the payroll. But
yeah, right. Unbelievable, right? 1985, right? He wins the Cy Young in 1985. He is 20 years old. He's got a 1.5 ERA. Yeah. He had 16 complete games, and 9 of them were shutouts. 9 out of 16 complete games, 9 of them were shutouts.
That's crazy.
He threw 276.2 innings, and he had 268 strikeouts. So it's a strikeout an inning for an entire season.
Those are like 99 Pedro numbers. I mean, and he could have done that consistently.
Yeah.
He was 20, right? Like, and then he goes, 1986, he follows it up, and he had a decent year. He was, top 10 in Cy Young. He was fine. He had a sub-3 ERA. And then 1987 is 22 years old is when he got hooked on the drugs, and it was never the same. It was just never the same. The fact that he played Major League Baseball until 2002 blew my mind. Like, he just hung on. He hung on a couple years in the Yankees, a couple years in Cleveland, went to Houston, Tampa Bay. Like, he was just kind of like bouncing around, but he was never could get back to that level. So he's number 2. Number 3, Keith Hernandez. I love Keith Hernandez. I'm obsessed with Keith Hernandez. I love everything about Keith Hernandez. The way he played defense, his approach at the plate, everything about him. I know he came from St. Louis, and he had some really good years with the Cardinals as well. Like, it's not like he was a bum in St. Louis. But the Mets needed that. Like, the Mets needed, going into that season, they needed a guy. And the guy that they targeted was Keith Hernandez. He admittedly opened. He didn't want to be there. He's like, I really don't know where this club's going. I don't know where management's taking. I don't know if I want to be here. They convinced him to stay. He stayed. History's, that's history is written there. I mean, he was a great New York. I mean, he 11-time Gold Gloves at first base. I mean, the guy still is. You look first baseman highlight tapes. He's all over it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fourth one for me, which was tough, but I couldn't not. And this is between 2. It's between David Wright and Mike Piazza. But how do you pick one of those 2 guys? Like, Piazza had a great career as a Met, but he also played really well in LA. He had a really good overall career outside of the New York Mets. I mean, we talk about Zimmerman was Mr. National, like David Wright was Mr. Met. I mean, he was literally Mr. Met.
Yep.
I went with David Wright, but I felt really guilty about it. But like, only because how do you not have David Wright on the top 4 Mets of all time? Like, how do you not do it?
Yeah, I'm with you. I would have done the same thing.
and maybe the numbers aren't totally there. Like when you compare it to other guys, like, Carlos Beltran had great numbers as a Met. He wasn't there obviously as long. Carlos Delgado had great years and great numbers as a Met, but he wasn't there long enough. Like David Wright was there through it all. The guy came up as like a 20-year-old, and he just played his ball bag off year after year, season after season. And there was quite a few seasons with David Wright played good all-star baseball, and they stunk. They were just not a good baseball team. And he never complained. Never heard him demand a trade. Never wanted out. Always wanted to be the one to bring the Mets back, which to me was why I was so devastated in 16 when they lost to or 15 when they lost to the Royals. I wanted it for David Wright so bad.
Oh yeah,
he deserved it.
Yeah, those are my top four. And I think the one you could probably make an argument for is Gooden, just simply because it was only for a couple of years. But to your point, Nick, like to this day, you think New York Mets pitching, like you think Seaver and Gooden, like those are your top two.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I got the Philadelphia Phillies, and to kind of follow the pattern somehow we got on. I got two old timers, two semi-new modernish guys. Obviously, number one, Mike Schmidt. I mean, 2,200 hits, 550 bombs, 1,600 RBIs. That's what it is. Steve Carlton, number two, 329 wins, 55 shutouts, 5,000 career innings pitched, 4,136 Ks. I mean, get out of here, dude. That's gross. And then I got Jimmy Rollins, number three. I felt like this one was kind of a wishy-washy pick for me. I could have put, I think, a couple other people here. But 2,500 hits, 470 stolen bases, MVP in 2007. He won the Gold Glove and Silver Slugger that same year. And he was only a Philly. I don't think he left to go anywhere. He was an all-time Philly. So that also weighed into my decision there. Number four, Ryan Howard. He was just kind of a consistent pick there. I was going back and forth between him and Roy Halladay, but I mean, I feel like Halladay got his love when he was in Toronto. So, I mean, what Ryan Howard did for the Phillies in the first part of his career was pretty impressive. I mean, he actually might be the last guy I've seen marketed, because he used to do the Subway commercials all the time.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's literally it. But he had 1,500 hits, 400 home runs, 1,200 RBIs. He won Rookie of the Year and MVP in back-to-back seasons. So he won the Rookie of the Year his first year and then won the MVP the very next. I mean, he was just there for them during that stretch. So, I mean, those were my four.
He got them. He was, he's a big part of that World Series team, too.
Yep. Absolutely. A couple guys that, like, were kind of on the cusp for me was, obviously just because I love the guy, John Kruk. Lenny Dykstra. Lenny Dykstra was really good center fielder, great leadoff hitter. And then
Nails.
Yeah. And
self-given nickname too, which I think is the most hilarious part of the fact that that's his nickname, is that he gave it to himself.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, there's a couple others. Tug McGraw, Tim McGraw's dad, was on that, and then
you could have made it. You could make a case for him to be on the Mets one too.
Yeah,
he had quite a good career for the Mets as well.
But I mean, when I think of the Phillies in the '90s, it was like Darren Dalton, John Kruk, like all those guys. Like, it's so good. Yeah, those are my. Oh, Pat Burrell was another one, but
Pat the Bat.
Yeah, Pat Burrell.
I mean, there was some guys to pick from the modern era, but I
have no idea if the stats back this up, but I feel like Pat Burrell would be in the Hall of Fame alone just for being a pinch hitter. I feel like this guy, he's never got out as a pinch hitter.
Yeah, kind of like John Vanderwall.
And it'd just be like a guaranteed double or a home run, like every time he pinch hit. I could be wrong, but like that's just how that's what I think of when I hear Pat Burrell.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, those are my four. So the Phillies. But
nice.
Right. And Stacy finally agrees with me. That's nice. I like
I'm
that. I like that. Thank you. I'm gonna retire now. Good luck with the show, boys.
Terrible.
All right, on to
Is
Harrison.
that like a mic drop moment? I'm out.
Yeah, I'm done. All right. So we got Harrison with the Braves. Here we go.
Braves. This one was actually harder than I thought it would be.
There's
There's a lot of history with the Braves, but players I look at and I go, yeah, but like just not. I don't know, just not people that I like immediately associate to the Braves. You know what I mean? So, first choice is obvious, Hank Aaron. I mean, if you don't choose Hank Aaron to be on the Mount Rushmore of the Braves, you've never watched baseball. Clearly, not much need to say about Hank Aaron. He was pretty good last time I checked. Number 2 for me was Warren Spahn. He holds all the pitching records for the Braves to this day. Pitched over 5,000 innings, won 356 games, 63 shutouts, and started 635 games. He holds all the pitching records for the Braves and probably always will, given the numbers he put up while he was there. And he's also there for a long time. And then my other 2 picks, I think one of them is an obvious one. The fourth one might not be, and it's probably not necessarily statistically backed, but I go back to like the Zimmerman approach.
David Justice.
David Justice. Oh man. My third choice is Maddox. I think Greg Maddox is synonymous with the Braves. It's if I had to pick one from that whole Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz group, I think Maddox is kind of the figurehead of that group.
Absolutely,
I think that's true.
And kind of carries that whole group in. But I think he's the face on the mountain for them. And then my fourth choice was not necessarily statistically backed. It was more about association of the team, and that was Chipper Jones. I mean, not that he was a slouch. The guy wasn't like terrible or anything, but there's guys like Eddie Matthews that put up better numbers and all that. But still, when you think about, arguably one of the best switch hitters of all time, a long time only Brave, and very much the face of the franchise. And he kind of handed that torch off to Freddie Freeman when he retired. And the two of them still maintain a very close relationship and kind of with their love around Braves baseball. Chipper was the Braves for a lot of years.
Not just he was Atlanta. He was the city of Atlanta.
Totally. That's fair.
He ingrained himself into that city. Like every part of Atlanta loved Chipper Jones.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about when the Braves traveled, who was the player every fan went after?
Yeah,
it was Chipper.
Yep.
Yeah, think of the Mets with all the Larry chants.
Yep.
He was the face of that franchise. He was the target of that franchise. He was the guy. And you're right, Sean. It was more than just the Braves. It was Atlanta. I mean, he was basically the mayor of Atlanta for a lot of years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so ingrained in that community and with that organization and others. And when I think of Braves baseball, he's absolutely one of the first 4 names I think of.
Absolutely. And he's still involved with them. He's
always will be.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, you did a great job with that list. I mean, those 4, no doubt.
Tough to
I don't know if I can remove any of those guys and put somebody else on.
No, honestly. It's amazing how many players in Braves history really, should be considered. There's a lot of history there.
A very unsung hero that not many people know about, but Terry Pendleton.
Oh, Terry, for sure.
He was a back-to-back MVP for them in the early 90s. Like, he was really good for them. But
Andrew Jones is to me similar to the Chipper Jones, where it's like Andrew was just kind of like Andrew Jones was Braves baseball for a while. Like he was stalwart in center field. He was, he was big time.
He was a friggin' baseball web gem every night on Baseball Tonight.
He certainly was. For like a 6-year period, he was everywhere.
I think Stacy's got a good point here. I do wonder in the end if Freddie Freeman actually ends up on Mount Rushmore or even takes Chipper's spot if he becomes, Mr. Brave.
Yeah. Gotta put the numbers up, buddy.
Gotta sign again and stay.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you gotta stay.
Yeah, I just remember Andrew Jones like being in Little League and watching him. All the coaches are like, "Catch the ball above your head," and then you go and watch the Braves that night, and Andrew Jones is like, "Basket catch, bare hand catch." So you're just like, okay.
And what amazed me with Andrew Jones is how shallow he played, and how much ground he could cover.
The ground.
Oh my God! There was nobody better catching a ball hit over his head than Andrew Jones. Nobody ever. Now Jim Edmonds and Griffey had flashier catches, but it's because Andrew Jones was camped underneath it before it came down, where those guys were still running for it. Exactly. Nobody read a ball off the bat better than that guy. He was unreal to watch.
I agree. All right, Sean, the Marlins.
Marlins are a tough one too because it's like they don't really have like stalwart players. They don't
like
have a guy
rental players.
He was a like they just bought teams. This is
Yep.
kind of what they did.
Twice.
You know, like it was like Harrison was like, you know, we was talking about who the Nationals, right? And he's like, well, you have, you know, this guy, but he was only there for like 5 or 6 years. It's like that's all the Marlins is.
Yep.
Just guys that have been there for 5 or
Totally.
6 years. So like it was different. First one, I can't believe he was there for 7 years. I mean, I can believe it, but Giancarlo Stanton or Mike Stanton when he started out as whatever the fuck.
Right.
But he was there from 2010 to 2017. I couldn't believe he was there for 7 years.
No.
And he was going to stay for longer, didn't he? He got traded to New York, right?
No, he
so,
signed that big ticket. Unbelievable.
So he'd still be there if the Yankees didn't take his contract.
Unbelievable. I mean, but the guy, the 7 years he was there, he hit 270. So like nothing crazy, but nothing great. But it's a power hitter that's a corner outfielder, right? Struck out 1,140 times. So he was feast or famine. We know this. He is that way now. That's just what he is. But he hit 267 home runs. He had 672 RBIs. So, I mean, the guy was what he was. What he does in New York, he did that in Miami or Florida for 7 years. He's the first one on there.
Dude, hold on. Before you go on, dude, when you shared your MLB like extra innings package with me, I watched a Marlins game once. The craziest hit I've ever seen was off Giancarlo Stanton, right? He hit a ball so hard. It looked like an average ground ball to short, right? It was flat on the ground, but they had that weird shift, so it went right through the shortstop hole all the way to the wall on the ground.
Yep.
The ball started in the infield on the ground, and it had so much steam on it that it hit the wall. Ground ball the whole way. And I'm like, dude, what?
It defies physics, man.
Like, people don't understand how hard that is. Like, I don't know if I can get one through the grass out of the infield right now, dude. And the guy just hit one to the wall through the grass.
I went down to Citi Field probably 2014 or 2015. And it was like a Mets Marlins. And obviously he's playing right field for Miami. And I think it was John Neese on the mound for the Mets. And not sure anybody knows, John Neese was a big lefty that did not throw very hard. And he was a crafty lefty, but wasn't very crafty. So he was just a lefty that would just kind of lob it in there.
He's a crafty lefty.
In the box. I believe it was his second at bat. And he steps in the box. And we were sitting behind the third base dugout, probably like 25 rows up. So like, you know, kind of like field level, but like back a little bit. And he's in the right-hander's box. And he turns on this ball and he hits it. It's the hardest ball I've ever seen hit like in person. And by the time like our heads could go like this to watch the ball, it was already coming back off of the facade of the second level. Like it was a line drive that it was still on its way up and it hits like the facade and then it's coming back into left field. Like by the time we could turn our heads to like track the ball, I had never seen anything like it. It was absolutely amazing.
It's crazy.
So interesting fact about Giancarlo Stanton, he actually owns the MLB record for highest exit velocity, and he's done it twice. 122.2 mile per hour exit velocity.
Dude, someone's gonna die.
Think about that for a minute. You think about playing catch with like Randy Johnson throwing like 100 miles an hour. This is 20 miles per hour faster than that. Who the hell's going to get in front of that to catch it?
Dude.
But
yeah,
twice he's
disgusting.
hit balls at 122.2 miles per hour exit velo.
Wow.
Oh, freakish.
Unreal. So second on for me, and again, maybe the stats aren't there because he was only there for 4 years, but from 2003 to 2007, Miguel Cabrera. Now everyone remembers Miguel Cabrera. He's probably on when we the Tigers. He's on the Tigers. I get it. But Miguel Cabrera was one of the few like young players to start off in the Marlins system, work their way into the Marlins big league club, and like be a really good like MVP caliber player like the whole way. 2007 comes along, he moves on and all that. He becomes kind of big fat Miguel Cabrera, who's a DH / a first baseman. But this guy was an outfielder and a third baseman for Florida. Like this guy was a young athletic player. He played, like I said, only 4 years. But he had 138 home runs, 523 RBIs, and he batted .313. That's the crazy part for me. The power was there. He had 183 doubles, 842 overall hits, scored 449 runs. But to me, it's the average. I mean, this guy was a 313 hitter, and he got on base at a 390 clip. So, he was able to kind of do it all for that at that young age.
Yeah.
And it was only 4 years, but I still think he deserves. It's not like there's any lifetime Marlins out there that would unseat Miguel Cabrera.
No,
Absolutely.
goodness no.
And similar to the third one, Jose Fernandez, RIP in peace. I mean, this guy was, Nick, we talk about when we had like that MLB subscription this guy was must-watch TV for like a year and a half, 2 years. Every 5 days, like you had to tune in to watch what this guy did. He was young, but he was like that power pitcher, but like that already at a young age knew how to pitch. So he was like setting guys up at bats in advance. He was like, he wouldn't break out the breaking ball till the fourth inning. And it's like, oh shit, now we have that to deal with. Like, awesome.
Yeah, right.
He was like so ahead of his time with like the ability, like mind-wise, of like how to set guys up and pitch. So good. It's such a shame that he passed away. I mean, he was that guy, and he was only getting better too. Like he was approaching Max Scherzer level. Like this guy was going to be in the Cy Young conversation for the next 8 years.
Easy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
I mean, imagine.
He was filthy.
I mean, you imagine in 2021 if we had Mets Marlins 4 times a year, DeGrom versus him. I mean, that would have been epic baseball.
Unreal.
So that is just
I don't know if DeGrom would win that matchup. Like honestly,
no, that would be.
He was that good.
We are talking about somebody who literally could outpitch Jacob DeGrom, not by fluke, but like just because he outpitched him.
Yeah.
So good.
100%. Terrible.
And I think it's such a shame.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I always think of, when I think of Jose Fernandez, Troy Tulowitzki, when he was with the Rockies, hits a rocket up the middle, and Fernandez just goes, and then Troy stops. He goes, "Did you catch that?" And he goes, and just walks off the mound. It's like
he was like 21 years old when he did that.
Yeah. Like, man, but he was nasty. That guy was
so bad. It was such a shame.
Couldn't believe it.
Such a shame. And then the fourth one is really the only one that I really thought of as like, and he wasn't really like a lifetime Marlin, but like for the fact that he was a Marlin, like I put him on it, and that's Luis Castillo. That remember
Great
Luis
choice.
Castillo? Do you remember he was like the closest anyone's ever come to the 56 game hit streak. I mean, remember he had it up to like 48 games at one point.
That's right.
Remember it was like it was either mid or late 40s, and he extended it with a drag bunt in the 8th inning that it made me feel all the feels. I was like, that was the most disgusting / ballsy thing. This guy's got a 46 game, let's call it, hit streak on the line. He steps up, he's 0 for 3 or 0 for 2 or whatever, steps up in the 8th and drag bunts down the third baseline for a hit. Like, let's go. It was awesome.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Was he the greatest second baseman of all time? No, he wasn't.
He dropped that pop-up in the Subway Series. That one hurt a lot.
The guy hit just under a tad under 300, so we would get on. He was a 370 on base percentage. He was fine. Stole 281 bags, had 271 RBIs, and 1,273 overall hits in 9 years. So nothing to sneeze at. But like, he's not a Hall of Fame second baseman. But again, for kind of the lack of history that the Marlins have in that sense, I put him on there. I think that he kind of at least deserves a spot on there.
Well, Luis Castillo leads the organization in a lot of offensive categories.
It doesn't shock. He was there for 9 years. He's got to be the longest tenured.
He's played the most games, scored the most runs, has the most hits, most triples, most walks, most stolen bases as a Marlin.
Wow.
Many people consider him to be one of the top 2 or 3 Marlins of all time. That's a great choice because he's a guy that most people forget about.
So it was pretty cool growing up in Portland in the 90s because when the Portland Sea Dogs came up, they were the Marlins affiliate. So we saw Levon Hernandez, we saw Charles Johnson, we saw Luis Castillo.
Really?
We saw Mike Lowell before they went up to the big leagues. We saw those guys in Portland. Like, it was really cool.
Those were the 2 guys that I wanted to put on, but I didn't know who to take off. And there's no way I was taking Jose Fernandez off for anyone. Yeah. But 2 of them, one was Mike Lowell, and the other one was Dontrell Willis. I know Dontrell was really only a flash in the pan, but good Lord, for like a 3-year period of time, that guy was like he was must watch for a different reason, not because he was going to dominate. He could have a good game, but like his antics were just.
He was nuts.
There was no one like him at the time.
Swagger.
There was no, and he would pitch, dude. He would pitch a 1-0 shutout, and then they would win on a solo home run by Dontrell Willis. It was like this guy was incredible.
Carlos Zambrano was the same way.
That's right. So for like a 2-year stretch, like this guy was awesome, but he just didn't have the longevity. And I'm like, I can't take anyone off for Dontrell Willis.
No, you know the one guy I think about when I think about the Marlins, who probably does not belong on Mount Rushmore because statistically he just wasn't. No, it was Jeff Conine.
Conine. Cliff Floyd,
Conine. He was
Floyd's the guy I think of.
Cliff Floyd's another good one, but Cliff Floyd. I think Conine was only there for 5 or 6 years. He was actually on both World Series winning teams. He came back. It was on the 03 team, but he was on the inaugural team. He was kind of like the captain of that team. He was the elder statesman. Around all those rookies that didn't belong when that team was starting up, and many people consider him the glue. But he was that steady guy in the lineup. Definitely not on Mount Rushmore in terms of what he did while he was there, but more so just like he was the first guy in that kind of got him off the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cliff Floyd's the same way. You've got a variety of guys that had, short stints that were impactful. Gary Sheffield. People forget about Sheffield as a Marlin.
I was just going to say
Rodriguez was there.
Yep.
Hanley Ramirez. Hanley Ramirez spent 6 years there.
He did.
Let's list the players that weren't on the Marlins at one point. It'll probably take a lot less time.
That's the fun. I mean, the Marlins. If you came up with the Marlins, you played for a few years and you were gone, or they brought you in and paid you too much money to make one big run. Like Beckett, they developed and then they just let him go. They were like, we got what we needed out of you. See ya. AJ Burnett, Dontrell Willis. Like they produced a lot of good talent. They just didn't keep them.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna be like a player that's played elsewhere, like who doesn't want to play in Miami for a couple of years? Like hell yeah. You want to sign me? Sure. I'll play in Miami for a couple of years. We're probably not going to win anything, but whatever. Miami.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go and pick or spin the wheel of doom for our NL Central next week.
Spin the wheel of doom.
Yep. So Harrison gets 2, I get 2, and Sean gets his 1 here.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go Harrison first here.
All right, who am I getting?
Brewers.
I really want the Cards. I love it. Give me the Cards. Done.
All right.
Cards it is. All right. Nick?
Yep. Give me the Reds. Give me the big red machine.
Absolutely. That makes so much
sense.
sense.
Good one. That's a good one.
That is a really good one.
If I get the Pirates for my one and only, I'm going to be so pissed.
Dude,
all right, who's Sean getting? Who's Sean getting? There's so much history.
Oh, Cubbies. One. All right, good. I'll take the Cubbies.
Good. All right, that's good. All right, my second one.
Give him the Brew Crew. Give me the Pirates. Oh, he's going to get the Pirates.
Yes.
Oh, just got it.
Nice. And Nick gets his Brewers.
4 Roberto Clementes, man.
Right. Honorable mention, Roberto Clemente.
Yeah. The one guy I had to leave off, Roberto Clemente.
All right, so I got the Cards and the Pirates.
Yeah, I got the Reds and the Brewers, and Sean's got the Cubbies. It's a pretty good draw. I mean, all those teams have history, really. I mean, even the Brewers have some good players that I can pick.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the NL Central's got some pretty good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
All right, so we'll have NL Central next week. We are now going to move on to the rounding third segment, where we threw out the question, what is the best ballpark besides Fenway? Because I know we have a whole bunch of homers that listen to this podcast and that are on it. And then we're so we're going to start with what we had for answers. Morgan Sawyer from the SOS podcast said AT&T Stadium. I always know it as Pac Bell. They've changed the names every 3 years. So, but in San Francisco with McCovey Cove, I mean, there's nothing like that field for sure. You know, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago with Barry Bonds when he was going for the record, and like all those kayaks are there and wedged in, like
incredible.
It's so cool, man. Like there's no other feature that another ballpark has that matches it. I mean, maybe this next one, Josh Thibodeau said Wrigley Field. I mean, you got the bleachers on top of the apartments. Like, I mean, that's pretty sweet too. I mean, So cool. Mitch McFarland to Camden Yards. I have not been there yet. I heard it's an incredible
It's
place to
amazing.
watch. Yeah,
Beautiful ballpark.
It's on my list. I want to get there so bad. Sarah Carter said she went to Miller Park, and she said it was incredible because they actually tailgate before the games. Yeah. She's like, I've never tailgated for a baseball game except for at Miller Park.
You're in Milwaukee, awesome. The home of beer and cheese. You have to,
I know,
have to celebrate
still,
that.
Like, no one tailgates for a baseball game.
I know, I love it.
Granted, in like Boston, there's nowhere to tailgate because you're freaking in the middle of the city, right off Mass Ave. But I mean, that's pretty cool. It's like it's a whole event, like every game. That's awesome.
Yep.
Doug said Yankee Stadium during the Sox-Yanks games. I mean,
but are we talking old Yankee or new Yankee?
I would probably say the old Yankee. I mean, because the rivalry was at its best with the old Yankee Stadium, for sure.
Okay, but the only reason why I specify is because old Yankee Stadium was kind of like a dump, but like the atmosphere was awesome. Yeah. New Yankee Stadium is actually a really nice ballpark.
Yeah.
Like New Yankee, like I don't like New Yankee Stadium. I mean, I obviously hate the Yankees, but like I'd go to New Yankee Stadium, like just to watch a random game. Like that's a nice ballpark, the new one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Old Yankee Stadium was nasty. It was surrounded by stuff that was nasty. It was just like I felt like I was going to get stabbed or something on the way to the ballpark. Like it was that whole area was just not fun to be at.
Yeah. And then obviously Stacy said Safeco or whatever that one is now. What is it now, Stacy? Whatever the name is. I don't even remember. And then Nick Fanning, also from the SOS podcast, said Coors Field.
It's T-Mobile Park. That's
T-Mobile Park.
T-Mobile, that's right. T-Mobile.
Whatever.
Yeah. And then our last one, Nick Fanning from the SOS podcast said Coors Field.
That's a cool ballpark.
I have been to Coors Field. It is amazing. We walked up game of and $4 seats. We were in the rock pile. We were in the rock pile, baking in the sun, but I mean, $4, like, can't beat it. And then even the box seats were like $20. But I'll start with mine. My favorite ballpark that I've been to. I've been to a bunch, but I really, really loved Marlins Park. Just because, like, a lot of people that I've talked to have never been there. I went with my buddy Steve and Mark, and we walked up to the window and we're like, "Hey, what's the closest you can get us for $20 a seat?" And they go, "How's the first baseline sound?" And I go, "What?" I was
actually,
like, what?
For $25 you can play today.
Yeah, I should have asked that. But like, what are you used to? I'm like, we're Red Sox fans. Like, you can't even get in. Can't get on Yawkey Way for $20. Like,
no, it's $85 just to get in the door.
Yeah, crazy. But I mean, that ballpark was cool. The only thing I didn't like about Marlins Park, and I'm glad they took it down, was that stupid cartoon Marlin animatronic
ridiculous.
Thing. So brutal. It
felt like a kid's amusement park.
Yeah, and it was like so out of place. Like, it's so gorgeous with that windows on the backside that overlooks the skyline and stuff. Like, it's so cool. It's a nice ballpark. And the aquarium in the backstop, like,
cool. That was cool.
It's pretty cool. But that's my favorite. Nationals Park is a close second, but that one's really Miami.
That's a cool ballpark.
Absolutely. Okay, how about you guys?
National Parks is mine. So Nationals Park, I should say, is my favorite one. It's up there. It's like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. Like, there's a few. Like, Camden Yards is amazing, and it's a beautiful ballpark with a great experience, especially if you go to like a Orioles game at night. Like, it's right there in the Inner Harbor. Like, the backdrop of it is just gorgeous. That's up there. Citi Field, obviously biased as a Mets fan, but Citi Field is really nice.
Beautiful.
It sucks that like it's the airfield is right there, so it's like this constantly planes, but it's just part of it. But the stadium itself is really nice. New Yankee Stadium, really, really nice. But I would say Nationals Park is probably my favorite one. I went down there years ago. They ended up being on the road, so at that particular. So I've seen a couple games there, but this particular time I went down and they were on the road. I was going down with a buddy of mine. We went down to a weekend Red Sox series in Baltimore. And obviously DC is like 45 minutes away or whatever it was.
Right.
So we went to the Friday Sox game and then the Sunday Sox game. And then Saturday, we didn't go to the game. So we just drove to DC. And I mean, I just love DC, the city anyway. So like, it was a blast to go to DC. And then the Nationals were on the road, but we were like, oh, you can take like a tour of National Stadium. And National Stadium was only a couple years old at that time. So like, you can take a tour for like $30 or $20, whatever it was. So I was like, all right, well, it's probably not going to be a detailed tour, but it's still pretty cool to get inside the park. No. Like $25. We got in both locker rooms. We were in the dugout. And the tour guide, there was probably like 8 of us on the tour. And the tour guide like walked us along like the warning track, like down the right field line into the bullpen. And they like let us like throw pitches like in the bullpen. So like it was kind of badass. And the guy that was giving the tour, like you could tell he was just like kind of like us. Like he was just like a baseball like geek. So like he was like telling stories that like really didn't have anything to do with the tour, but they were just like really cool baseball stories. And I just loved the guy. I'm like, this is just, I could do this for like 2 more hours. Like it was really, really cool.
That's how I did. I did JetBlue Park in Fort Myers, and it was kind of like that same thing. It was really cool. But yeah, that's awesome. Love it. How about you, Harrison? What was yours?
Mine is Busch Stadium. And the funny thing. So I'm really a traditional baseball purist. Like I don't like Marlins Park drives me crazy because the amenities are obnoxious. It's a beautiful ballpark, but I find the amenities obnoxious. Like Arizona, I find that ballpark's beautiful. But like the hot tubs and all the ridiculous stuff in the outfield, like to me, this doesn't belong in a baseball field. But I get the entertainment angle of it. So I've always loved the Cardinals. They're my kind of favorite National League team. Always have been. I got family that's always been Cardinals fans. But I love this ballpark because it's right downtown. It's open air, so like you're seeing like you feel like you're sitting in downtown when you're in the ballpark. Right. Like it's like you're integrated into the city. You've got your bullpens in the outfield. You've got a nice amount of foul territory. You've got, typical dimensions, not any like weird walls or crazy short porch or anything like that. Great batters backdrop. It's comfortable, great amenities, but it's the environment inside of that ballpark. Like people say Red Sox fans are crazy and Yankees fans are crazy. Like St. Louis Cardinals fans might be the most devoted fans in all of sports, but they're also the most educated fans in sports. Like they know like Red Sox fans like the Red Sox because they're from Boston. Yankees fans like the Yankees because they're the Yankees. Like half the time they don't even know who's on the team, but they wear the hat. Like you sit down in the inside of Busch Stadium during a Cardinals game and you are surrounded by people that understand the game. Like they react in the right way. They react at the right time. They know what's happening. They know what's going to happen. Like watching a game inside of that stadium might be the best experience in all of baseball, because that fan base is just so in touch with the game and the players, and it is by far the most fun I've had at a baseball game ever. Wow. Was sitting in Busch Stadium.
Yep, on my bucket
love to get out there.
Yep. Okay.
Take the podcast on the road.
Yeah, group trip.
Dude, all about it, dude. We'll just live stream the whole game. It'd be awesome.
I'm fine with all of it.
Yeah. All right, sweet. That was a great discussion, and thanks for all those entries. Those are great. I mean, that's my bucket list item is get to every park.
I'd love to. Yeah.
So bad. We're hoping in April to fly out to San Francisco and drive up the West Coast to Seattle and fly home from Seattle.
No shit.
So we're hoping to get the Giants and the Mariners in that trip. So
are you welcome in Seattle? Has that been determined? Like, are you allowed to go to a Mariners game?
As long as Stacy stays in Maine, I think I'm good.
Okay.
All right. My luck, they'll probably lose that day, but anyways,
it'll be all your fault.
We'll talk about it.
Right. It'll be they'll lose. Somebody will get there'll be like some devastating injury, and it's all your fault.
Yeah. Griffey comes back for one game. No, anyways, all right. We're gonna move on to heading home. We got a couple things we're going to talk about real quick here because we're already at an hour and 25 minutes here. But, I mean, who's on the time restraint? I'm not, but
whatever.
All right, so we got the news this week that Jon Lester is not going to come back to Boston. Sad face. He is retiring. He's off into the sunset. Does he go into the Hall of Very Good?
A Hall of Very Good? Yeah.
Well, that's what the Hall of Fame is now.
Well, I know this, but I'm saying Hall of Very Good. Yeah, absolutely. Hall of Fame, I don't know. I think there's an outside argument to be made. But I mean, but here's the thing, and I know that it's like if a guy like Roger Clemens isn't in the Hall of Fame, then Jon Lester can't be in the Hall of Fame. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry.
That's embarrassing. It'd be embarrassing to
is,
put him in before Clemens.
It's just like, how do you do that? Like, how do you do that and then like sleep, like lay your head down and be like, I did my job. Like, you didn't do your job because Roger Clemens is on the outside and Jon Lester's on the inside. But with that being said, I will always have a special place for Jon Lester. Met the guy a couple of times, just kind of in passing. Always super nice, always cordial, always taking pictures and shaking hands, and never in a rush. He was just a great guy. And then obviously, a top Red Sox for our generation. I mean, this guy battled his ball bag off. You know, the things that he went through off the field, the things that he had battled, like the health and stuff like that. Always did it in a classy way. Never complained. You know, he was awesome. He was awesome. He was an awesome guy an easy guy to root for too, you know, with all that off the field stuff. And he was very open about it. And he would get on the mound every 5 days and he would battle and he would grind and he'd give you everything he had. Easy guy to root for. So I love Jon Lester.
Yeah. I mean,
I remember he went through the whole cancer thing, and then when Anthony Rizzo was in the minors and went through it, Lester was actually the guy that was like in contact, coaching him through it, and
that's right.
Rizzo actually attributes a lot of him getting through it to having Lester's support the whole time, and nobody asked Lester to do that; he did it himself.
Yeah,
right.
And the thing with Lester too is like he was kind of like Rivera a little bit. I mean, obviously not as dominant, but he just threw a cutter most of the time.
Right.
Every once in a while, he'd throw a curveball in there or a slider, but he was mostly a cutter on the outside, cutter on the inside. Like that was Jon Lester's, maybe a two-seam fastball, but like it was mostly just a steady diet of cutters from Jon Lester. But yeah, I mean, I loved him in Boston. He was great. I hated to see him go to Chicago with Theo, but I mean,
but at the same time, you know, here's a guy who was part of teams that broke two massive curses.
Yep.
You know, granted, Theo knew that he could handle it, so that's why I brought him there, having seen him do it in Boston. But guy that was part of two teams that broke massive curses. I mean, you know, statistically, does he belong in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely not. The guy won 200 career games, and he was only like 9-7 in the playoffs. Like he was never a dominant player. He never won ERA titles, Cy Youngs. He never even won 20 games.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a reliable guy. He came out, he pitched every year, you know, no big injury scares or big time periods missed. Didn't throw much in terms of pitch selection. Sean's right. He basically threw, or was it you, Nick, that said he basically threw like two pitches. But he just located them. And the guy was a bulldog. He fought, he battled. I agree. I hope the guy never ever buys a drink in Boston his whole life. You know, absolutely has a special place, or Chicago. The guy has a special place in a lot of people's hearts, but he does not have a place in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I mean that's what it is. I mean,
if Schilling's not in, if Schilling's a borderline case, Lester's is even weaker.
Right.
I mean, and he didn't even have the postseason dominance. I mean, Schilling was so much better in the postseason.
Yeah. That's where I'm at. I mean, he's definitely Red Sox Hall of Fame, maybe, but
he was like Harrison. He was a very good pitcher, very reliable pitcher, and an easy guy to root for because he would put his on the line every 5 days, and he would grind and battle, and he was a bulldog, and he would you know, he was an easy guy to root for. But like all that's well and good, you're not a Hall of Famer though.
Right. Agreed.
Also, our next topic, Rachel Balkovec is the first female manager for the Single-A Yankees for the Tampa Tarpons. How do we feel about that? I'm all for women in baseball. Mm-hmm. I think she'll do a great job. I mean, baseball's almost gotten to the point where if you can read and put forth the analytics part of baseball, you can manage. If you can manage people and read what the analytics report says now, you can pretty much manage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's unfortunately that's what it is. I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
I like it. I mean, I'm all for it. I think it's a great for her to kind of break that barrier in a way. I don't know. I'm interested to see kind of. She played big time college softball. Like she's like a baseball, softball person. Like she's not. Excuse me. She's not like a math person that like is big. I have no idea if she's big in analytics, but I just mean like she's not like some stat, nerdy,
Right.
Math guy. Like she's baseball. I think it'll be interesting to see how she kind of handles the ebbs and flows of a baseball season. I know it's minor league and it's a shorter season, but the things that come up in the midst of a game, like it's about things about feel, and it's not just the numbers tell you to do this. But like but with that being said, that's what every first-time manager has to deal with, like male or female, or whether they played college baseball or college softball or they didn't play any of it. So it's like it's not like there's no reason to think that she's not going to do well, I think the big thing will be like if she continues to rise. Let's say she does really well in Tampa, and she rises up in the Yankee organization. She gets her way to AA, and then she's maybe AAA bench coach, or like however the progression works out. Like, how is she going to be able to deal with like the higher you get up, the bigger the egos are, and those egos are not going to take easily at times to a female telling them what to do, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not saying I defend them for doing that, but it's going to happen at a certain point. It's probably not going to happen. So, I mean, I think it's great. I think she's going to do really well. Everything. Yeah, Sarah's at least 2 master's degrees, one with a focus on kinesiology. I mean, like, there's no, and she played big time college softball, like I said. So, like, there's no reason to think she's not going to do well. So, I mean, I think it's good for her.
Yeah, I think she's totally capable of being a manager at the professional level. But I don't see how this is ever going to work out. And I look at it as I think that women absolutely should be in baseball. I think they should be in front office positions. You could be a hitting coach, pitching coach, bullpen coach, strength and conditioning coach, scout, GM, all those things. I just don't think a woman can be a manager. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I don't think she's got the skills or anything like that. But I think when you look at a baseball clubhouse, and I've been in clubhouses for, college level baseball and national travel baseball and all that. And not major leagues to any extent, but it's going to be very hard for a woman to integrate into a clubhouse. First of all, she can't be in the clubhouse for a number of hours of hours during the day when they're in there changing and all that. They won't let her in there. So she won't have the bonding time. Typically the manager's office is in the clubhouse. And when you're staring out the window at naked asses walking by, so you're going to have the guys are going to have to change their behavior, or she's going to have to go sit somewhere else. She's going to have to change in a bathroom down the hall because there's going to be no facility for her. She's not going to change right in the clubhouse with the guys. I don't see how you integrate her into that role where she has to be excluded for big chunks of the time. She doesn't have the experience in baseball. Softball will help, but she's never been in their shoes. She's never been in that situation. So it's going to be hard for the guys to connect with her on that level. She has some experience, but not in the same situation. It's going to be hard to integrate with the guys. We all know what the dugout chatter is, the hot chick in the third row and all the stuff we talk about.
But I don't know.
It's going to be weird potentially, and potentially, I would say awkward for her to be integrated to. And I think the clubhouse and dugout culture, when you get 25 guys together, especially early 20-year-old guys, you're talking minor league guys. These are immature guys that are, 18, 19, 20 years old at that level. I don't see how a woman in that position can be successful when she has to be treated differently or managed differently. And I would love to see it work. I feel like they're setting her up to fail by putting her into a minor league clubhouse.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, there's going to be those additional hurdles, no doubt. When it comes to her not being able to be in the clubhouse for the entire time because of the so it's losing out on that bonding. Like I get all that, and I don't necessarily think that you're wrong. There's going to be additional hurdles, but I don't know. I don't look at that and say like, oh well, let's just chalk it up as she's probably not going to succeed. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is winning baseball games. And does she help this team win baseball games? Does she help this franchise produce and develop these younger players? I mean, that's what minor league systems are all about. I mean, I'm not here preaching to you guys. You guys know what it's about. I mean, it's about, can we get these young guys to develop to a point where they can help the New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox or the Chicago Cubs or, whatever franchise we're talking about. mean, if she can do that and she can win some baseball games and help these guys become better ball players, like there's no reason why she's going to have to stop doing that, you know? And I think at the end of the day, like all three of us, none of us have played in the major league level, but you know, you at the end of the day, you just want to get better. Like you want to win games, you want to get better. And if she helps you do that, then like, yeah, what? So what? She's not in the clubhouse for 3 hours in the morning that we're in there. Like, so what? Like she watches film just like the rest of us. Like she sees what's forcing me to go into the slump, and she's helping me break out of it. Like, so what that she has to change in the bathroom down the hall? Like, I get all that stuff is going to make things more challenging for her. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, if the results are there and these players are improving and getting better, like, I mean, good for her. And I think it's all available there too. And I don't know on a personal level, but just the things that you read, some of the things that have been put out since this news came out, she certainly seems to have the qualifications. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it'll make it tough, but I don't think that's right away going to be like, oh, like she's doomed to fail.
Yeah, and I made the point, you know, like you have men that coach women. You have Gina Oriema in UConn.
Sure.
You have, you know, college softball coaches that are men. Like, so it works the other way, you know, where that could even be more detrimental. You think of that double standard, right? If a woman walks in on a man changing, it's usually like, oh, sorry. But like if a man does it, it's a completely different reaction, right? I mean, I'm just calling that's how society sees it. Like, is it fair?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. But yeah, I mean, it can be done. I think she's going to be great. It's like you said, it's single A. They're on the road a lot. Like it's not glamorous. It's not glamorous at all. It is 8 to 10 hour bus rides, if not longer. It's brutal. But I give her all the luck in the world. I hope she does it.
Did Nick just get kicked off?
Almost made it through a whole show. Almost. But yeah. So I mean, I really do wish her the best of luck, and I hope she succeeds because it's a really cool story.
The only thing I would say to that is I think the women's college basketball is the best parallel, where you have a lot of male coaches in women's college basketball. The difference is they have massive staffs, so they're a CEO. Like Gino Ariam is not in the club, in the locker room. He rarely sees these girls except on the court. He goes into his office, creates the practice plan, hands it to the assistants, goes and walks around the court, goes back to his office. He doesn't see these girls otherwise. You know, she has no staff. It's going to be her and a couple of assistant coaches, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's a hands-on role, and I would love to see her succeed. I'd love to see a woman be able to coach at that level and see that progress. I just feel like they're setting her up to fail at a level that low with young, immature guys and no support resources. I feel like they're just setting her up. And what's going to happen is if it doesn't work, they're going to say, oh, well, it doesn't work. And they're going to throw the whole idea out.
Right.
And I feel it's almost like the Yankees are saying, hey, we're going to be the first guys to do this. We're going to do it really crappy and it's going to blow up. But look at us. Look at the headlines we're grabbing right now.
Look what we're doing.
I just feel like it's disingenuous and they're not going to give her a real shot. But she of all the women in baseball, she probably has the best set of experiences and skills to go take on this challenge. But it is a hell of a mountain to climb. And they're basically making her do it alone.
If there was one position they could put her in, it is to replace Aaron Boone, and she would have the best chance of success. Right. Honestly. Right. Like, get rid of that guy, and she could always do better than what Aaron Boone does in New York. But God, man. But yeah. All right. Well, good luck to her. But we will keep an eye on that story, as I'm sure that there'll be other things that pop up during the year and how they're doing. So
and I'll just say this, just to finish it. I 100% am with Harrison. If they are doing it in a just disingenuous way where it's all about, hey, look at us, but there's nothing really behind the offer of giving her the chance to succeed, then that's absolutely terrible, and I'm with you 100%. But as long as the Yankees or any franchise is going to do it is going to give you the resources to succeed, then go for it. Then go for it. Absolutely. So we'll watch and see. And you know, Harrison, maybe you're right. Maybe it is a bit of a disingenuous. It wouldn't totally shock me if it is. And I mean, that'd be awful. But I hope not. I hope it's as real as it gets.
I'm with you, 100%. Well, that does it for tonight. We had a long one tonight. Thanks for sticking around and chatting with us, everyone. That was great. So just like our page, share our page, subscribe to our YouTube page, and keep checking our page this week for trivia questions and the questions of the week. And we will see you guys next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.